John Paul Jackson and I were in Atlanta, and the morning we were driving to the airport to fly back home. I said, John Paul, I had this dream last night. I said, well, I got in the shower and turned the water on. I said, but water didn't come out of the shower head. He said, what came out? I said, Neapolitan ice cream. And it was coming all over me and it shocked me. And then I realized I kind of liked it. And he says, oh, he said, Phil, from God, you've been in the midst of one of the hardest seasons of your life, but something sweet and refreshing from heaven is about to be poured out on you.
Welcome to the Awaken Magazine podcast, where we feature inspiring leaders who are helping our world awaken to love. I'm your host, David Trotter, and today I want to share with you a powerful conversation with Philip Zaldatte. He's a visionary lifestyle strategist, business consultant, who also happens to be a dream interpreter. Now, in this conversation with Philip, he walks us through how he became what some would call a coach for the spirit, how he has helped businessmen and women around the globe navigate some challenging situations, not only in life, but also in business. He also shares with us how he personally has overcome Lyme disease in recent years and how that has impacted his way of thinking about not only life, but his coaching and his business. And then he shares with us the power of our dreams, not just our dreams, visionary dreams of what we want to experience in life and business, but our dreams that we have when we are asleep, and how that can give us insight into our purpose and into our potential. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Awaken Magazine podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Spotify. Click subscribe, leave a quick rating or a review. That's an easy way for you to help us spread the word about these inspiring interviews that we release each and every week. All right, let's dive into this conversation with Philip Zaldatte. Phil, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. Thanks for taking some time to connect with us today.
Oh, I've been really looking forward to it. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah. One of the ways that you describe yourself is a coach for the spirit. Tell us what that term means to you.
Just from my experience working with businessmen, that's what they started calling me. It's a spiritual guide or coach for the spirit. I'm helping them look inside and helping guide them through an inner transformation, because it takes a change of heart and it changes. You need to have a change of ways of your thinking to get a new start and bigger dreams, bigger vision, and that type of thing. It starts on the inside. So that's what coach for the spirit.
Everything starts on the inside.
Spiritual transformation.
Yeah. I love it. Tell us about your own kind of development of spirituality over the years. You talked about coach for the spirit. So did you grow up in a family with some sort of faith, or did that come to you later in life?
Yeah, in fact, my parents put my brother and my sister and I in Catholic school. So that was my upbringing, was in Catholic school, dealing with the nuns and all of that stuff.
How were your knuckles? Did you get your knuckles?
Yes. Get your earlobe.
Did that literally happen to you?
Yes.
Really?
With a ruler.
Oh, man.
It took me getting some inner healing after I left Catholic school. But the education was really good.
Yeah.
I got into public high school and I was like a year ahead of everybody.
Okay. How did things unfold for you after high school?
I wrestled in college, and then kind of went a whole different direction, got into the partying scene and that type of thing. And then it was that my ruptured Achilles tendon that slowed me down. I ended up in the hospital through Christmas, having it surgically repaired and rethinking my life and rethinking what direction am I going. And a friend of mine, who you may have heard of, because I think he's on your magazine cover, Tim Story, He was the only one that came to visit me while I was in the hospital. And he had a Good News Bible and he handed it to me. And every day he showed up to encourage me and to remind me that there was a call of God on my life. And so that got me rethinking everything.
Wow. And you were
Yeah.
you were in your early 20s at that point.
Yes.
My goodness. So, you get out of the hospital. What path did you take in terms of kind of spirituality and career?
I was rethinking everything, but I was haunted by all these Christians that kept coming up to me to tell me there was a call of God on my life. You know, Tim Story being one of them, because I grew up right around the corner from him and his family. So I would go down to the park to smoke a joint or whatever, and I turn around and there's Tim. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what a way to, you know, quench a good buzz. Um, and and then I'd go to a pub and then I'd go walk out after the pub closed and there'd be this group of Christians. I'd go surfing in the afternoon, up would paddle up these Christians, reminding me about a call of God on my life. And it was some time later that some friends that I had met 2 years prior called me and said, we're going to a Christian concert and we thought we'd come by and pick you up and have you come with us. I went with them. And that was my first experience to evangelical Christianity. It was at a Calvary chapel.
Mm.
And I came home that night and I had a God encounter. It's the only way I could describe it.
Hmm.
And I kept hearing this voice telling me to flush all my drugs down the toilet. I couldn't go to sleep. I kept trying to go to sleep. I couldn't go to sleep. And I kept hearing that voice, flush all your drugs down the toilet. And finally I did and went right to sleep, woke up the next morning and realized all desire to get high for a number of years was completely gone. And I went outside and it's as if I could smell the flowers for the first time in years. I could see the beauty all around me. And then a car comes driving by and they slammed on the brakes and skidded to a halt. And there's Tim Story and his sister. And they hung their heads out the window and said, what happened to you? And I told them what happened the night before. They jumped out of the car and started dancing in the middle of the street. And so that was the beginnings of me uh, living a life of faith in Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for a number of years, um, and then crossed paths with a man by the name of John Paul Jackson. Uh, he said God gave him a vision of me 2 months prior, and he knew that he would run into me in Oceanside, California, and that's where our paths crossed. And he says, I believe I'm supposed to open the door to mentor you in your spiritual gifting. I ended up traveling the world with him. And one of his primary giftings was the ability to interpret dreams like a Joseph or a Daniel.
Mm.
And so I traveled around the world with him.
Now, just for people who aren't familiar with John Paul Jackson, tell us who he is in terms of his level of influence in kind of that Christian Pentecostal world.
Yeah, he grew up in the Assemblies of God from a young age, and so that was his beginnings. Um, but then he began to realize that he had this revelatory gift, and so he began teaching on dreams and visions and teaching courses on helping people to hear the voice of God, to grow in their intuition and revelatory gifting, to have a greater impact, not just in church but also in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot from him over those 7 years, but then realized my call was not to stand on church platforms. I had a desire to take the spiritual gifts outside the four walls of the church and help business people understand how their spiritual makeup could help them have an impact in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I began doing, traveling the world, teaching on that type of prophetic evangelism, so to speak, helping them get in touch with the heart of their Heavenly Father that created them,
Mm-hmm.
and getting a vision for their future.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going down that path. And some years later, I realized everywhere I went, I was noticing leaders were not growing. And I was going back and forth to the same places, other countries, and realizing leaders weren't growing in their leadership capabilities. And so I thought something is missing. And so long story short, I was getting ready to speak somewhere and I came across this website where they're having a marketplace conference. And one of the speakers was a guy by the name of Lance Wallnow and a professor from Regent University named Dr. Joseph Umidi, who wrote a book on coaching. I ordered his book and got about 2 chapters in and realized I think this is one of the missing pieces.
Hmm.
And so I ended up going to his school. I took his professional course to get accredited and certified as a leadership coach, and then went back again and got certified as a business consultant. And then I took some other courses and became certified as a behavioral analyst, where I could help people take personality style assessments. And that's usually what I would use to open up the coaching um, relationship. I
Yeah.
would go over the assessment with them and they'd be so blown away. Like, how did answering that little number of questions, it pumps out a 17-page report on you?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just are so amazed by it. And so that usually is the break. It's an icebreaker. And I use that to start the coaching relationship. I usually ask for a 3-month commitment from every client because usually it takes about 3 months to get the breakthrough that they're looking for.
Hmm. And how many years have you been coaching people in the business context?
Over 20 years.
Hmm. Yeah. And you said you've been doing that literally around the globe. Is that right? Or there's particular
Yes.
countries that you focused more so on?
Transition. That became my uh, specialty, so to speak, area of expertise,
Hmm.
or I would get invited all over the world to teach on transition.
Okay.
There's a scripture in the Bible that says God desires that we prosper in all things, even as our soul is prospering, and that's usually speaking of 5 different areas: uh, to prosper spiritually, physically, emotionally, relationally, and materially.
Hmm.
So every client that I coach them in all 5 of those areas.
Hmm. Are there particular countries that you spent more time in than others?
Uh, Probably in Europe.
Hmm.
I've gone to Spain to do a workshop at a historic guitar factory in Madrid.
Hmm.
And in fact, that's where that picture comes from. He was a 2008 Tour de France cycling champion. I stayed at his parents' house. His family's responsible for bringing me out there to do a workshop for small business because their economy was going really bad and they needed encouragement. So they brought me out to help encourage the small business owners.
Hmm.
And so there in England, I've been to South Africa. I've gone to Romania and coached and interpreted dreams for the poorest of the poor, as well as for those that were wealthy. And
Hmm.
so it's the public speaking that I've gone out and done that has allowed me to coach people from all different walks of life. I was teaching a workshop in Las Vegas, and this man comes up to me and he says, "Hi, my name's Paul Henry. You're going to be my coach." And I said, "I don't really know you yet." And he says, "No, but you're going to be my coach." It turns out he was the chairman of the Democratic Party for the state of Nevada. And
Wow.
so I ended up coaching him for 5 years, and he opened up doors in Hollywood. He opened up doors in with the casino owners, coached some of them. I got a phone call from him from Washington, D.C., and he says, "Phil, say hi to so and so." I'm in a limousine with him. I don't want to say his name, but he was connected to the White House. And he said he had a dream 2 nights ago, and he's been troubled by it ever since. And I told him all about you, and so he wanted me to call you and to maybe help him understand the dream he had 2 nights ago. And I ended up coaching him for a month regarding his dream, and
Wow.
it helped him a lot.
Well, I want to get into this gift that you have of dream interpretation in just a moment, but
Yeah.
I want to kind of just segue for just a second about the last 5 years. You've had a bit of a bump in the road and
Yes.
developed, well, probably some deeper levels of character in the process.
Yes. I I was actually getting ready. I was being groomed and prepared to have my own TV show on a platform based out of London called Transformation TV. But then the pandemic came, and I guess in England and those countries around that area, the lockdowns were very severe and they ended up folding. And then I started having these symptoms at night: chills, achy joints, heart palpitations, waking up with a foggy brain. And I thought it was some type of flu strain I had. I didn't go to the doctors. Turns out I was infected with Lyme disease for close to 2 years before I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And they said my symptoms were not at the beginnings, but what they would call late stage or chronic Lyme disease. And literally, once the process of treating it started unfolding, the symptoms got worse, and my business came to a screeching halt. And yeah, I it brought everything to a screeching halt, and it gave me time to rethink my future. What do I want it to look like? Um, and what are my core values? What are my core values that are going to get me to where I want to go in the next number of years? And what do I want? What do I want my business to look like once it restarts? So I had and there's a scripture in Psalms where it talks about Joseph. Until it was time for Joseph's dreams to come to pass, those dreams purged his character. And that's what it's been like for me, purging my character and getting me to thinking a different way. When I shared that scripture about 3 John verse 2, about your soul prospering, it's talking about a renewed mind. I needed to have a renewed mind and start thinking differently. Otherwise, and this is what I tell coaching clients, unless you have a renewed mind, your past continues to be your future, and you don't want to live like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I'm much more of a fighter than I realized. I realized I'm a stronger person than I ever realized. And I have more anticipation and excitement for the future than I've ever had.
Yeah,
So
amazing. And how's your health doing now?
I'm going to the gym 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, and I'm doing much better. Yeah,
Good.
getting my strength back, and I'm ready to launch out again.
I love that. I love that. Well, I love that we get to help be a part of that.
And
Uh,
there's so many people that are struggling with chronic illness like that.
mm,
And I think I have the ability now to encourage them and help them walk through that like I had to.
mhm. Now, I know that through your business, Prolific Leadership Solutions, you do offer some one on one coaching, but
Yeah.
now you're in a season of wanting to focus a bit more on group work and speaking in organizations and events and summits and webinars and so forth.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some of these key principles, though, that you have been helping business leaders with for 20 plus years. And we actually have a lot of listeners who are, not necessarily, they would just consider themselves spiritual, conscious,
Yeah.
mindful, and yet they're wanting, of course, a deeper connection to the divine. They're wanting health in all the ways that you talked about: physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological, material. Um, One of the things that you have worked on with people is lifestyle design. And
Yes.
so how would you define lifestyle design? And what are some of the biggest shifts that are required in order for someone to upgrade or redesign their life?
What the stage that we're in right now, we've been through the agricultural age, the industrial age, the information age. We're now in what we call the conceptual age, where we need to realize that we're all creators and we can create our future. Best way to predict your future, create it. And so a lot of the business people that I've coached, I would call them alpha males. They know how to make money, but they're very low on the emotional intelligence area, and they're often very left brain thinking versus right brain thinking. And I work with them to help them understand that they can create and develop something bigger than what they're walking out now. Let me read this real quickly to you. It comes from a book called The Artisan Soul. It says, "We've been given a gift, the ability to dream. We've been given a curse, the ability to dream. The dream is meant to be the beginning, not the end. The dream is our hope for our future, our dream of love, our dream of significance, our dream of sobriety, our dream for a better world, a dream of success, our dream for a better us. When we imagine but do not create, we are left with an overwhelming sense of dissatisfaction. When we imagine a better world and do not risk to create it, we find no fulfillment in our success. When we imagine ourselves as better or different than we are, but do not change, we are in danger of despair and hopelessness. Humans must create, not only to express ourselves, but to find ourselves. So I work with them to help them understand that. And also tell clients this: your dreams are the product of your longings, a portrait of your potential, and a promise of your future. So to get them to start thinking more right brained, intuition, getting a vision for something. Vision gives pain a purpose because change is hard. But if you have a vision for your future, you're looking at that end product, that vision coming to fulfillment, and you can walk through the difficulty of change much easier when you have that vision in your heart and your mind.
Mhm. Absolutely. Talk to us about you were talking about their dreams in terms of like a dream for your life, but we've also been talking about the interpretation of dreams.
Yes.
You were kind of mentored by John Paul Jackson on this. Um, Talk to us about why do we have dreams? Uh, what's the purpose of dreams, and how do you help interpret those dreams?
I had to do a lot of research and understanding that everybody has their own dream language. So it takes some intuition, interacting with somebody as they're sharing their dream, getting a sense or feel for what might be their dream language. What might those, and it's about asking them questions. So, what does that blue car mean to you? What does that red car mean to you? Because colors have meaning, numbers have meanings. I'll just share this quick story. I was on the local radio station here in northern New England. They heard about a life coach that knew how to interpret dreams, so they invited me onto their radio show. And at a certain point, they opened up the phone lines, and the phone lines literally exploded with people calling in with their dreams. Well, it went off so well that they said, "Would you consider having your own show on our show?" So for 4 years, it was called the Coach's Corner with Phil Zaldatte, and they'd open up the phone lines at a certain point, and I'd interpret dreams for an hour. Um, a military guy that was in Desert Storm called in, and he started sharing about a dream he had where he would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and it was tormenting to him. It got so bad that he lost his marriage, started doing drugs, started drinking again, lost his job. And every time he saw the sun going down, he would dread came over him because he knew it was going to be time to go to bed, and that tormenting dream would come back again. So I helped interpret that dream and told him that issues we run from run to us, because there was this horrible looking demon type creature that kept chasing him, but he never turned around to face off with it. He would just keep running. And so I coached him. I said, "This is lucid dreaming, very vivid lucid dreaming." I said, "At a certain point, when you go to bed tonight, stop running in your dream, turn around and face off with this creature." He did, and the demon took off, and the tormenting dreams ended. And I ended up coaching him after that for a little over a month or so. And he ended up getting his marriage restored, got his job back, got his health back. And uh, it was that interpretation. And he got in touch with some abuse that he went through as a child. And Desert Storm triggered that abuse and started those tormenting dreams at night. So great things can come out of the interpretation. I encourage people not to just dismiss dreams. I'll just share this dream that I had. John Paul Jackson and I were in Atlanta, and the morning we were driving to the airport to fly back home. I said, "John Paul, I had this dream last night," and he says, "Oh, really? What was it?" I said, "Well, I got in the shower and turned the water on." I said, "But water didn't come out of the shower head." He said, "What came out?" I said, "Neapolitan ice cream." And he started laughing, and he says, "Oh." And I said, "Yeah." And it was coming all over me, and it shocked me. And then I realized I kind of liked it. And he started laughing even more. And he says, "Oh," he said, "Phil, from God, you've been in the midst of one of the hardest seasons of your life, but something sweet and refreshing from heaven is about to be poured out on you to keep you going. So you never know what those dreams can mean.
Yeah, yeah, that is beautiful. Why do you think we have dreams?
Doctors say that if we didn't dream, we'd literally go insane. And sometimes we process what we've gone through and sort through things in the middle of the night during our REM cycle of sleep. That's usually when we have our dreams. But um, with the number of people that I've helped them understand their dreams, the dreams that they have, and they remember them vividly and they write them out, uh, usually have some profound meaning for them. So I help them get in touch with what the symbols that are in those dreams. Um, and I teach them along the way so they begin to understand. And pretty soon they start understanding their own dream language and they're able to start interpreting their own dreams.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the most common lifestyle patterns that people have that are holding them back from living out that vision or dream that you were talking about?
Limited ways of thinking. And you don't want to get stuck in limited ways of thinking. Bono from U2 says that if your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. And so it's time to start dreaming bigger because the destiny that you were created for is bigger than you. But we don't like to be out of the comfort zone, but it's being out of the comfort zone that we grow the most
Mhm.
and we start believing bigger for ourselves. We deserve to have big dreams. We deserve to have something bigger than ourselves. And in the process of accomplishing those dreams, we grow as a person, both mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, and also very often relationally as well.
Mhm.
So it's good to get out of that limited way of thinking and start believing bigger than you.
One of the challenges that seems common among people who are type A performance driven individuals, as you mentioned earlier, there can be a level of success, financial or accolades in some way, but there can also feel like our world in the process is constantly demanding more, bigger, more. For me, that was the experience when I was a pastor in church. I don't think necessarily our world was telling me that, but internally, I was trying to fill a void of not enoughness. That if I
Uh,
could grow that church big enough, help enough people, then I'll finally be somebody or I'll finally be enough. How would you give advice or encouragement to those who are listening that feel like it's never enough? I can't help enough people. I can't grow this business big enough. I can't, right? The demand for more. How do we address that in our lives?
uh, but often I have to teach these alpha male type individuals is about boundaries for yourself, boundaries for your family time, because usually their life is all focused on making money and influencing people, and they end up shorting themselves relationally with their family and themselves growing personally. And so I help them to be able to look inside themselves and ask them, what part of you would you like to see more mastery in your personal life and or in your spiritual life or whatever it might be, helping them to get in touch with what's going on inside. Once you start seeing what's going on inside, you realize, wow, from the outside they look like they have it all together, but inside they're very insecure, feeling like they're not doing enough, they're not accomplishing enough. But then when you begin to ask them, what have you accomplished up to now? And you begin, it's almost like showing them in a mirror what they've done. And they're going, oh my gosh. They realize I've actually done very well,
Mhm.
but these areas over here need some work. So I walk with them through the process of transition. The first stage of transition is called necessary endings. Something has to come to an end before something new can begin. So helping them get in touch with a fresh vision of their future, the way they would really like to see it happen, and then helping them write down some goals or some steps they can take right now to start walking that direction. So as a coach, we're more of like a cheerleader. I don't have to be, I don't have to be a professional stockbroker or whatever to walk with these guys. I just need to learn to ask compelling questions to get them to look inside and
Mhm.
help them get in touch with really what's going on inside and what do they really want to accomplish. It's legend is what the lifestyle that you're living. Legacy is how you're influencing others, and that's what's really most important. What are you leaving behind for your kids? What will your son say about you once you're gone, or your daughter, or your wife, or whatever?
Mhm.
Um, so helping them get in touch with what's going on inside and what's really important to them.
Mhm.
Because
Well,
many of them, I realize they haven't had a coach in their life. You know, it's not been unusual for me to be um, talking to some of these guys. One guy's 25 years managing partner at Goldman Sachs, and about 2 months into the phone call, I'm coaching him. I heard him crying, and I asked him, "What's going on?" He said, "This is the first time I feel safe to share what's really going on inside of me." He said, "Phil, you have no idea the number of people that want something from me. And so I have my guard up 24/7. But for the first time, I can lower my guard and share what's really going on."
Mhm. What would you say is your unique ability to be able to connect with all sorts of different people? You talked about interpreting dreams for people in foreign countries that are, struggling financially, and yet you're also here working with someone who's 25-year partner at Goldman Sachs. What is your what enables you to have the ability to connect with all these different types of people?
Because, like you, I was involved in full time ministry for a number of years. So I had relationships all over the world. And when they started hearing Phil's not doing full time ministry anymore, he's a life coach, they started calling and asking, "So tell me about this." And I tell them what I'm doing and tell them about the area of transition that I do a lot of teaching all over the world about with. And so I had all these invitations all over the world. So it was me being able to go out and speak publicly about what I'm doing. Um, I could pick and choose who I wanted to coach, some from the financial world to flying to Romania and meeting with some business people, but then also interpreting dreams for the gypsy community
Mhm.
that were the despised people in Romania. And and I, I've spoken at a homeless shelter in downtown Atlanta called Blood and Fire. It's not there anymore, but I would go there also and just hang out with the homeless. And the most important thing to them wasn't me giving them food or giving them clothes. They were amazed that I was willing to sit down with them and just hear their story.
Mhm.
And then I'd give them some advice and coach them about how to get back on their feet and get their life back together again.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I was connected to a group of marketplace businessmen based out of Connecticut that take the train into Manhattan, New York City every morning, and working with those type of individuals as well. It was very challenging because they speak the business language, and it was a marketplace men's organization that formed because Sunday morning church did not speak marketplace businessmen language
Mhm.
and what they go through, every day of the week. And so they formed groups like that where they could connect with other like-minded businessmen. And then they'd bring people like myself in, and I became their spiritual guide at their national retreats in Washington D.C. or wherever. So I'd be speaking to 800 of these marketplace businessmen that are very accomplished,
Mhm.
and learn to speak their language as well as the language of the poorest of the poor, and then everything in between. So it was true what Dr. Joseph Humidi from Regent told me when I graduated from that school. He said, "Phil, your journey has now just begun. You're going to have to continue studying. You're going to have to continue reading. You're going to have to continue practicing. You're just getting started." And so it was so true. I mean, if I showed you my bookshelves right here, uh, I joke around with people and I tell them I feel smarter just walking into my office and seeing how many books I have because I continue to study and continue to want to grow and do better than I'm even doing right now.
Yeah, yeah. So you're in a season where you're taking a few clients on in terms of coaching, but you're also making yourself available for speaking, as I mentioned earlier. What
Yes.
would you say are topics that you are most geared to speak on, and what sets you apart uniquely as a speaker?
Uh, Probably the topic of transition, the different stages of transition, and what are those? What happens in the after you come to that place of necessary endings, and you're lacking vision, and your new beginning isn't in focus yet, but there's no going back to what you came out of, and then developing a new sense of core values and helping clients and people get core values for about 10 areas of their personal life. The human drives that we all have
Mhm.
are to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy,
Mhm.
not just to be alive, but to truly live
Mhm.
and uh, and to love, not just receive love, but to dispense love everywhere you go and encourage people. And so I teach on all of these type of things and teach on the fact that what you were created for never changes, but the assignments leading to it will change. And so what does that look like for everybody? It's a little bit different for everybody based on where they're headed. And so I help them get the proper tools that they need to go out and accomplish that fresh vision or that dream that they want to see manifest.
Mhm. Let's say a listener is in the midst of transition right now and they're feeling like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this transition. Could be a transition of a marriage, transition of kids going off to school, transition of career, transition in a business. What encouragement would you give them today?
I would help them to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable because things change, but people transition and change. We in our human nature we resist change because it's uncomfortable for us. Because what is it going to look like? And so learning to be at peace with change and welcoming it because it's a new opportunity to grow. And usually people go through the negative aspect of it because they don't have somebody in their life to encourage them along the way, to help them understand you're headed towards something much bigger than yourself. It's going to be an unbelievable future. You're going to leave a legacy for your family, and on and on and on, and help them take those little baby steps towards that. And just listen. As a coach, you learn to listen because there's much more to what they're saying than what you're hearing.
Mhm.
And so encouraging them along the way because I've been through it again and again and again. And thank God I still have Dr. Joseph Umidi, who's walked with me through the whole process of me going through chronic Lyme disease and refocusing my life, and him encouraged me along the way. And so I would encourage, find yourself a coach that's willing to walk with you through your journey because you're not meant to go through it by yourself.
Mhm.
And
Wonderful.
sometimes family aren't the best ones.
That's true. That's true.
Because
All right. Well, go
I
ahead.
was going to ask you, you probably know that very well with the changes you've gone through career wise, being going from a pastor to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, yeah. People don't always understand. Family members don't necessarily understand it. So you got to find people that do understand, will listen and process with you and all that good stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
all right. So people are interested in working with you as a coach or connecting with you as a potential speaker. They can go to prolificleadershipsolutions.com.
Yes.
Leadership Solutions. And also, you're on Instagram at prolific_leadership_solutions. We'll have those links in the show notes, as well as all your
And also extremecoach@gmail.com.
extremecoach@gmail.com. Great. And that's just with no E, just an X. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. XTREM coach
At
at
Gmail.
gmail.com.
All right. We'll put all of those links in the show notes. Phil, it is great to be with you today. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. Could I share something real quick?
Yeah, yeah.
It's called The Lion Manifesto, and I think this will encourage people. Quit living as if the purpose of life is to arrive safely at death. Set God-sized goals. Pursue God-ordained passions. Go after a dream that is destined to fail without divine intervention. Keep asking questions. Keep making mistakes. Keep seeking God. Stop pointing out problems and become part of the solution. Stop repeating the past and start creating the future. Stop playing it safe. Start taking risks. Expand your horizons. Accumulate experiences. Enjoy the journey. Find every excuse you can to celebrate everything you can. Live like today is the first day and last day of your life. Don't let what's wrong with you keep you from worshiping what's right with God. Burn sinful bridges, blaze new trails, criticize by creating, worry less about what people think and more about what God thinks. Don't try to be who you're not. Be yourself. Laugh at yourself. Don't let fear dictate your decisions. Take a flying leap of faith and chase the lion.
Very inspiring. Thank you so much, Phil. Really appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to the Awaken Magazine podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and our other conversations, would you mind taking a moment to leave a 5-star review and maybe even a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? That's one of the ways that you can give back to the show and help us reach more people. And of course, feel free to share the episode with a friend. And if you're not already on our email list, we send out an inspiring email every Monday morning full of articles and interviews. Just head on over to awakenedmagazine.com and click subscribe and join for free. Our hope is that all the resources we share will help our world continue awakening to love.